education system.
Can you speak up, please?
The condemned cuts and privatisation of our education system are destroying the lives and futures of disabled children and young disabled adults. Is that working?
Yay!
Right, great. DIPAC believe that disabled children as well as disabled adults should have rights and not be reliant on charitable handouts. For me, inclusive education should be a right for every disabled child. We don't expect black children to be segregated in different schools or traveller children to be segregated in different schools. I do accept that this would require radical thinking in terms of changes to curriculum, exam structure and possibly specialist units in schools, but it could be done. And for me, until segregation in education ends, negative attitudes towards disabled people won't change. I've also seen at first hand the difference between young people who've been educated in special schools and mainstream schools, and I know that inclusion works. Which mainstream school a disabled child can go to is often restricted, as school buildings remain inaccessible. Many local authorities only have one secondary school in each area, which has been made accessible. And for anyone who's deaf or blind, the only provision available forces them to move away from their homes and families to special residential schools. The move towards increasing numbers of academies and free schools is leading to the further exclusion of disabled children from mainstream education. And together with the reduction in funding from local authorities for support staff in schools, it's moving inclusive education rapidly backwards to become less and less of an option for disabled children. David Cameron, of course, likes special schools. Cuts to care funding for children are also rising, and means that family members are expected to provide even more support. Sasha Callahan, who some of you may know, was telling me about a woman in Scotland who was desperate for extra help to look after her disabled child. So she asked social services to come and take the child into care. What they said was, we'll take your non-disabled children into care so you have more time to look after your disabled child. We still have a situation where aids and adaptations for children are means tested on parents' incomes. And I've known families where they've been carrying their very large, heavy 15-year-old sons upstairs because there's no money and funding for them to have a stair lift. And if you rent in the private sector and need funding for an extra bedroom to care for your disabled child, well, that's tough. You can't have it. If you rent in the social rented sector, it's up to your council or landlord to decide whether you can have it. Disabled young people have been entitled to claim incapacity benefit in youth from the time they left school, but me and Ian is going to take this away too. It's being suggested that families will be financially responsible for a disabled child until they're 25. And getting care funding for young disabled adults is complex. The funding comes from 3 separate sources. In many cases. The funding from health and social services tends to be focused on keeping you alive and clean. But the bit of the care and support funding that allows disabled people to be part of society is being cut. And now it's not open to new applicants. We know this has stopped many young disabled people going to university or college. DIPAC also believes that in one of the richest countries in the world, in the 21st century, it's wrong to have child carers. 1 in 12 children, some as young as 10, have to provide personal care, such as bathing and dressing for their parents. This is, as far as we're concerned, no different to the use of child labour in India or Pakistan, which is rightly condemned. But here in the UK, our response to child care is to say, aren't they wonderful? And to raise money through children in need so they can have a day out occasionally. We say, give their parents the kind of support they should have and end enforced child labour. So where do we go from here? We have, obviously, hopefully, a massive strike on November the 30th. But before then, the Lords will have passed the bill to abolish the National Health Service. Disabled people have quite often occupied Westminster Bridge. The police tried to tell us that if we took 25-powered wheelchairs onto Westminster Bridge, the bridge would collapse. It obviously didn't. We are going to be on Westminster Bridge next Sunday afternoon to support the UK Uncut action against abolition of our health service. It is our health service. We all need it, and I think we have to fight to save it.
Yeah.